Welcome to Mental Health Momentum, a Silicon Slopes podcast. I'm Dr. David Morgan. I'm a licensed psychologist and the Director of Mental Health Awareness here at Silicon Slopes. And on this podcast, we talk about mental health issues and we look for solutions. And today my guest is Carrie Hill.
Hi.
Carrie, nice to see you. Let me tell you a little bit about Carrie. She is a public relations and strategic partnership professional with an emphasis on working with nonprofits, which support women, children, veterans, and mental health awareness. She's an advisory board member for Promise to Live. Me too.
Mm-hmm.
She's a divorce-driven poverty thriver, speaker, and advocate for post-divorce work solutions against poverty. Her corporate work includes Neater's Bakery and Cafe, Crucial Learning, and CenExcel Clinical Research. She and her clients have been featured on Fox 13, ABC, KUTV, and KSL5, and nationally been featured in Redbook, Mind, Body, Green, the Boston Globe, CNN, and Positive and Psychology Today, and the Washington Post.
Mm-hmm.
And she's worked with a number of different nonprofits, including Harvesting Happiness for Heroes, Guitars for Vets, Mother's Prayer, the Children's Justice Center of Salt Lake County, and Supria. And I can attest to this. She is an energetic, optimistic motivator, approaching every individual she meets with kindness and with a warm smile. She believes in building people up in the community through her work. She is dedicated to her family and attributes her relationship with God as the reason for her thriving.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
That's great.
It's funny whenever someone does your bio, you think it's either too long or too short or like, oh, I need to change that,
Right.
So
I thought that was great. There are many that I have to edit. I didn't have to edit that one. So
Perfect.
That was great. So tell me about just, anything that we didn't cover in there. Like what do you like to do for fun?
Yes. Oh, fun. Do we have fun?
We have fun, yes.
My kids are my best friends, actually. They're all adults, and I
what
love
age
to
range?
hang out with them. So my daughter's 23, my middle one is 20, and then my son's 18. So
great
little
ages.
classic skating and longboarding
Nice.
and, just hang out, watch movies, do all the things. So, yeah, that's what I like to do for fun. I love to play guitar as well. So my dad is a lifelong musician. He plays about 5 different instruments by ear. And so I really have a deep appreciation for guitar. I'm super novice, but it's so fun for me.
Right. My son is learning to play, and it's something I've always thought would be amazing to learn because it's beautiful and it's so portable.
Yeah.
As well, right?
Yeah.
Piano's great, but you can't really take a piano with you where you go.
That's
but guitars you typically can.
That's right.
Throw it in the
Well,
back
and you
seat.
only need 7 chords to play every Nirvana song ever, So I'm working on my Nirvana songbook.
So tell us about some of your mental health experiences. Because I know you are a mental health advocate is something that you're passionate about. And just knowing some of your history already, because we met at a town hall that you spoke here at Silicon Slopes. I know you kind of had your own journey to get to where you're at right now. So whatever you want to share about that, it'd be amazing.
Yeah, thanks, David. Well, it was really lovely to meet you. I think that was the first time that we met a few months ago at the Promise to Live town hall.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so your work is so impressive, and the way that you approach mental health is warm and embracing and transparent, and I really, really appreciate that.
Thank you.
So I just want to say thank you to you for it's a tough topic to discuss, and I think more and more we're seeing it everywhere, right? We're seeing we're solutions. We're talking about the problems. We're talking about the idiosyncrasies and the niches of it. So I love that this is becoming a more regular conversation, and it's not so typed. And my experience, as you mentioned, a little bit about my background, but I was married for 23 years, and my spouse really went through a professional trauma at the time, and those can be pretty intense when you get to the C-suite level and there's something that didn't quite work out the way that you anticipated and worked really hard for. And it was just devastating for him. And there didn't seem to be a bridge for him to make his way back. And so there was never an official diagnosis, Dave, of what he was struggling with, but all of the research that I did and education that I did pointed towards clinical depression. Yeah. And so I operated from that space in trying to support this, this person in this capacity. And, we really went through the gamut of things. I saw days on end. I wouldn't see this person, this man for hours for days he would just be stuck
Mm-hmm.
in darkness in the bedroom or escaping or, trying to just make it through the day, basically.
Almost
And
unrecognizable to the person you knew before.
yes.
Yeah.
And it's one, I think for me as the support person. So I want to be, really mindful that I have experienced mental health from the standpoint of a support individual. I personally have never had to, battle an intense mental health challenge, but supporting somebody through that
Yeah.
challenge is equally as challenging.
100%. Yeah.
So I did feel like this journey that wasn't necessarily mine was a secondhand journey, and the impact of it was pretty dire for my family and I. There were months where there was no employment. There was no conversation or discussion about the feelings that were being experienced. There was just no clear, transparent communication. And what I learned through that process is I'm trying to piece all the things together, not having that communication, not really fully understanding what's happening to this person that I love and have a family with. I really learned a great deal of empathy, Dave. I can tell you that. There was a lot of really terrifying, lonely moments where you're not just impacted by the fact that this person has a mental health challenge, but now you're impacted by the actions that person is not taking to address that challenge.
Right.
So now you're dealing with potential suicidal ideation. Maybe you're dealing with, and I'm not saying this was my case, but for people in general that are supporting somebody in this space, maybe that's porn addiction, maybe that's drugs, what I've learned about depression is that it literally mutes every sensation. It mutes every logical thought. And if I could describe it to somebody, it seems to me that it's like Alice in Wonderland falling through that rabbit hole, right? And you're just going so slowly and everything else is just moving past you at a speed that you can't absorb. And so watching somebody in that space, that does really intense things to your heart and your life.
Yeah.
Because there's monetary implications, there's emotional, there's financial, there's family relationships that fall apart, especially when the individual will not address it and get help for it, right? And so, so for me, Dave, I learned quite a bit. I really tried to educate myself on what are all of the mental health pathways that people experience and how can I help my children to assess those as they move forward? And how do we support this person who doesn't know how to support themselves in this moment? And so, it's an intense, all-encompassing experience.
It's an interesting description as well, because on the one hand, you say your former husband went through this kind of professional trauma that started what appeared to be, kind of a major depressive episode. And then on the other hand, you said, well, that you haven't necessarily had any of your own personal experiences with mental health, although I would probably disagree with that somewhat, because the trauma that you went through that was caused by his trauma is not dissimilar. And so we all kind of go through that as well. And I think we spend a lot of time talking about how to help the individuals who are suffering through the mental health issues, the identified patients, so to speak, but we don't spend as much time talking about the supporters to that, who are in many cases going through something either equal to or even in excess of what the identified patient is going through.
Yeah.
And we need to have those conversations as well. How do you support that? It's like the whole point behind Al-Anon, right? Where they finally said, look, this is wonderful that all these people are getting together and talking about their addiction, but what about the people that support them in their lives that are having trouble as well? Who do they talk to? Who do they go and?
Yeah, you need a support group for the support group.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. A support group for the supporters.
Yeah.
So I love that idea because it brings awareness to that as well, because for every person that's suffering from a mental health issue, there is someone that loves them that is suffering alongside them, just because of compassion. They don't want them to want to see them suffer and struggle. So
agreed.
Yeah. So I love that. I think
Thank
that's
you.
Well, and I think that
it is interesting, David, that you say that, because I'm coming at it from, I haven't been clinically diagnosed with anything, right? But to your point, I don't think you you have to be clinically diagnosed with
No.
something for your mental health to be impacted by
You
a
didn't get out of
traumatic
that
experience.
unscarred.
So
Yeah,
that's right.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, you still bear
Yeah.
the scars
Yeah.
of what you went through.
Yeah.
And those scars give us compassion.
Yeah.
They help us understand later. And in many cases, they lead to people in your situation where you say, not only am I going to make it through this, but I'm going to advocate for it for those who are suffering. And the advocates are almost, it's almost better if they've been through something similar. I remember years and years ago, I just finished my doctorate. I was trying to find a job and I couldn't find one anywhere. And so I was applying to everything I could possibly find. And there was a substance abuse treatment center in Portland, Oregon that was hiring. So I applied there. I went and interviewed with them. And the person said, well, have you ever abused substances? I never had. I've had plenty of other problems, but that hasn't been one of them. And she said, well, how are you going to be able to understand these people? And I came up with some answer that clearly wasn't great. I think I could probably apply some general things or whatever. But in most cases, people that work at substance abuse treatment centers are people that are in recovery themselves, because they really get it. And they say, I know exactly where you've been. And I feel like had I ended up getting that job, if they'd even hired me, my words would have just kind of fallen flat with these people. They'd have been like, okay, wait, you've never smoked a cigarette, you've never, snorted a line of meth or anything like that.
There's a credibility piece, right?
100%.
That says, like, you can't, don't be a poser.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't understand me.
You can't understand,
But as much as but with mental health, I don't think there's anybody out there who hasn't been impacted by it in some way, either in the support role or in the like afflicted role, or whatever you want to say.
Well, and I think it's a lot more challenging still. I mean, we just talked to, mentioned earlier how much more frequent the conversation is becoming, but I think for men, that stigma is still very present, that, one thing that I learned, David, through this process is that by becoming through this experience, I became the sole income provider for my family. And that has its own mental health journey, because I spent so many years out of the full-time workforce that trying to step into a role that had historically been my spouse's, because we blueprinted our family that way, right? It was an agreement.
Right.
And then for the agreement to be broken in a way that was so traumatic, I guess, if you will, right? That journey in and of itself, from being, I don't know what I'm doing, I have some experience, but this is a whole different ballgame, right? It's a whole nother level of employment that I'm trying to get to. And how do I do that? That you just layer traumatizing experiences on top of each other. And the interesting thing about that for me was that your body gets used to living in this fight or flight state, right? You're a professional, you know this. And so I think the practical application of that is that even though you go through that trauma with somebody else and your mental health is impacted, it's not just your mental health, it's also your physical body, it's your finances, it's your time, it's your energy, it's everything that becomes impacted. And when things go awry, even though you may have come through that experience, that muscle memory of like going right back into trauma, right? Having that response, that is very, very real. And it's present in so many single women who have had to leave unhealthy marriages because of this exact same situation. And so it's not just that you leave the individual that has mental health and you say, oh, my life got exponentially better because I'm not in the presence of this
of the secondhand smoke, so to speak.
But now I've got to figure out a whole different mental health journey. So I really appreciate that you mentioned that earlier. Like, I wasn't diagnosed with something, but this has been an ongoing, refinding, I guess, of resilience, which is the name of my podcast, Refined Resilience, because that's my journey.
Right.
Is that every time you go through something, you have to go back to what you did before. When I spoke at Silicon Slopes with you, there was a couple that came up to me afterward, and I don't remember their names, but they were darling. And it was actually one of the speakers and his wife, for all of you that are whoever caught that in Utah. But his wife came up after and said, this is the exact situation that we've been dealing with, is that he's been so high and so low and so high and so low for so long that her trauma response is now just consistent. She's just living in trauma all the time because she never knows if she's secure
Right.
or stable with her in her relationship, in her money or her finances. And you know, Dave, what does that do to your family? What does it do for your kids?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I mean,
that instability is just, it's devastating.
It impacts everybody, right? And that has its own mental health journey,
Yeah.
insecurity and instability. And, you know, and I want to shine a light on that for a second, because with the advocacy work that I am building for this demographic of women to help other women, to take my experience and help other women be able to reconnect with themselves and know that they have the confidence to move to a different level in their life in a different way that was unexpected, that has its own journey. But in the state of Utah, we spend at any given time between $8 and $18 million of, on welfare for single moms with 3 to 5 children on average every month. We're spending that amount of money. And the majority of these women have had abusive situations. Yeah. They've had, mental health, spouses that are the clinical term of narcissist, right? Yeah. Not the one that we throw out so cavalierly, but really deep, intense mental health issues that they've dealt with in their marriage. And now they find themselves with no financial support, with nothing, no confidence, no skills to say, right, that they can really grasp or determine for themselves. So when we're talking about, and that's about 11,000 women in the state of Utah. So between $8 and $18 million at any given time for 11,000 women with 3 to 5 children. Right. Dave, what is that doing to the mental health of our women and our children, like in this state? So this trickle-down effect from having unaddressed mental health issues, when you are a male and you are the primary breadwinner, and in our state, this is many blueprinted, common, yeah. This is many blueprinted families. When you take on those agreed upon roles and then something traumatic happens to your spouse, you don't ever anticipate that you're going to be in survival mode for years to come, right? After that relationship ends, you think at some point I'm going to get better. It's going to heal. It's going to be okay. And so to have 11,000 women with 3 to 5 children living off of, anywhere from $1,700 to $3,500 of a month of allocated welfare, we're just creating a systemic generational poverty. Right. And when we do that and we suppress the mental health and the well-being of our women, in my opinion, Dave, we just crush the heart of society. Yeah. And that in and of itself is a mental health crisis, because now the nurturers can't nurture. Right. And that's not to say that men aren't nurturers, right? But in my experience, if mom's on the fritz all the time, who's taking care of the kids?
Well, and of the 11,000 you described, which are single mothers, they're the sole emotional support of their children in most cases. Yeah. And so, and if they're struggling to tread water themselves, right? Yeah, you're right. It is it's a problem, and it kind of creates this kind of chronic victimhood. Of just I'm always dependent upon someone else. I'm always at the mercy of I'm at the mercy of the legislature, and if they decide to approve this, or if the welfare division is going to renew my application or something like that. Exactly. And when we find ourselves in a victim stance, it's completely disempowering, and it does not benefit our mental health. People think, but then how can I get out of that? Because I can't just turn around and become optimally mentally healthy tomorrow. I'm like, no, you don't have to do that. Yeah. But you have to find out where you do have some power and exercise that power. Right. Well, what's one area in your life where you can turn it around at even 10 degrees, right? And there's a feeling that comes from that, where they go, oh, look at what I did. Look at this small change I affected in my life, which then changes perceptions. Yep. And it changes the way, their children. In your situation, Carrie, you could easily be 11,001, right? That could have been you easily, but instead of taking the route of saying, okay, what can I do about this? How can I benefit? Some time back, we interviewed Katie Bunnell on this program.
I love Katie.
Yeah. Live Your Dream
Foundation.
Yes. Who found herself in a similar situation from her husband's death, his premature death. And it's like, well, what do you do?
Yeah.
And now she's the head of a foundation that supports single moms,
Yes.
across the state of Utah.
Yeah. Well, to your point of advocacy, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm so passionate about getting women off of welfare, Dave, because I experienced welfare.
Right.
I lived in that. I know what that process looks like. And even though I spent maybe 6 months total on welfare, it was enough to know the system is completely broken.
Yeah.
This is broken. And I'm watching other women go through this process as well. And Katie experienced that too, not necessarily in welfare, but watching other women struggle in their confidence, in their abilities, in the what's next, what's the unknown.
And
I
she's
think
helping them get educated
and she's doing
and all that,
amazing things.
and improving their lives.
She's amazing.
I love that. I want to ask you about social media, because I know you're a big social media person.
Yeah.
You've got great social media.
Oh, thanks.
But social media can be difficult for some people,
sure.
just in terms of the perceptions and stuff like that. So what's been your experience in terms of, or any thoughts you have on, does social media affect our mental health at all? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it neutral? What do you think?
I think it's like anything. I think it can be what you want it to be.
Right.
It can be a really positive thing if you source positive content, right? If you're on TikTok all day scrolling through 20-second, clips of people doing, I don't, who cares? I know, I still fail to understand, David, the benefit of watching people just do dances on TikTok. I know that some people that are passionate about dance love that.
Sure.
But for me, at this stage of my life, I want all the positive content that I can get. And not only do I want to see it and read it and absorb it, I want to be it.
Yeah.
I think when you go through a really, really challenging, life-changing mental health experience, either yourself or with somebody else, you value life. Yeah. You value good. You value the positive. You realize that you have a very limited time. I was very lucky, David, that my former spouse did not take his own life. There are many people that are not so fortunate for that, and so finding the gratitude in the darkness and in those experiences to grow that empathy. I only want to be supported by other people who are sourcing the same kind of content and putting the same vibe out there in the world. And so for me, I think social media can be very healthy. Yeah. I think where it can be very negative for us, though, is to see how everybody else has had meteoric rises and they're so successful and they're doing all the things. But that they go home and they're like, I wonder how I'm going to pay my AT&T bill this month.
Right.
We are all struggling with something. So I think as long as you have that reality check to know everybody is putting their best foot forward, because that's what we do. We want people to see us how we want to be seen.
Right.
I want you to feel good when you see my social media account. I want you to walk away feeling uplifted. And I may be struggling with all kinds of things in the back, but who I am at my core is somebody that uplifts people.
Right.
And that's what I want you to see. So I think just being able to sit in the real and realize, everybody's putting their best foot forward. It's like going to an interview. You show up and you tell all the accolades and you say all the amazing things that are happening in your life because you hope that you get the job.
Right.
Meanwhile, your house is a mess because you just moved over the weekend. So I think it can be whatever we want it to be.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of, you can focus where you want the content too. I mean, it's so fascinating.
That's a great thing about algorithms.
Absolutely. And algorithms are very, very effective like that. And I always tease my wife. I always say my Instagram is broken because it's only showing me these 3 topics, and she's like, "I'll tell you why."
She's like, "Let me help you."
Yeah, exactly. Because that's what I've been looking at it for that time. And then if you start looking at something different, it changes and it goes to something different as well.
Yeah.
So you can, again, we're back to the idea of empowerment versus victimhood, right?
Yeah.
And you can say, "Look, I can control this.
Yes.
I don't have to be just at the mercy of whatever." Meta wants to show me here. I can actually control this to a certain extent, to the point even where you can just put it down too, if you want to. You don't have to keep looking at it.
Right.
So I agree. I think that there's a lot of good that has come from it, and that the negative that has come from it as well can be mitigated through our choices. We don't have to be a victim to that. So,
agreed. Yeah.
I love
well,
that.
And I think we have a huge responsibility as parents to teach our kids that exact same principle. This is You get to you have choice in
Right.
every single thing that you look at, everything you see, everything you take into your mind. It is literally your choice.
Yeah.
So I think when we hear about, these mass epidemics of social media impacting kids, um, I think for me personally, with my kids anyway, I have that conversation with them all the time. You guys, you are a contributor to this as much as you are a receiver
Right.
of it. So if this is impacting your mental health, then you need to make the change. You change. Don't wait for somebody else to bring you
Right.
positive content. Search it out. Be that thing. Put that good vibe into the world. If you're a teen that has struggled with mental health, or you're a teen of a parent that has struggled with mental health, share what works for you
Right.
with other teens. Use that social, every time you post, Dave, you're on a stage every single time. My friend Marianne Hickman, she says, she's a speaker coach, and she says that every time you are on social media, it is a stage.
Right.
So you think, how frequently do you have the chance to talk to 3,000 followers, 3,000 people in a room?
Right.
Use that platform for good, and you can teach your kids that from a very early age, and I think that will have a great impact on their mental health.
Yeah. Well, and I think just that idea, like you talked about with your children, that empowering idea of saying you have choice in this.
Mm-hmm.
You can do something about this. You can use this to your advantage instead of just using it as something that you're getting beaten over the head with. Almost anything is like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love that's when your answer to the original question about social media was like, you said it's like everything else, right? It just
Mm-hmm.
depends. And I think that's right. Everything we do can be used for good or for bad. It's just a matter of how we approach it.
Yeah.
And the key is being an actor in the role and saying, having a determination, saying, this is what I want to do.
Right.
This is what I'm going to do, and then execute from there. And I think far too often, and so many of the people I deal with in a mental health context, they just feel like they're just being completely pushed around by their life. They don't feel like they have any control or any management of it. And those experiences naturally lead to depression and anxiety, just that disempowerment. So telling people to just take back the power.
And I think too, Dave, what I observed was when you allow, and I don't want to say, because there's so much about mental health diagnosis that I don't understand. So I don't want to speak out of context, but I will say that if you have a tendency toward anxiety or depression, or these are a little bit more manageable mental health challenges than some of the others, but I think there's a point where if you don't choose to address it, it will choose to take you down.
Absolutely.
It will just inherently, that's the direction it goes naturally, right? There's not an option. You are literally the only catalyst that is going to change that for you. And so if you continuously wait for your diagnosis to change, right? That's never, no, it's you, honey. Like you're the person to change. So I would say to that victim, mindset that we talked about earlier, there is a point where you get to choose. And if you don't choose in that pivotal moment to do something about it, it's going to take you down.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to fight 10 times harder to get off the ground and even be motivated to make a change. And so I really don't want people to be victims. I really want people to understand, if the second that you start to feel that something is off, that something you're not enjoying life, there's an apathy to the everyday of your experience. You don't want to hang out with your kids. You don't want to see friends. There are clear indications that you can recognize for yourself. Something is taking me somewhere I don't want to go. Right. And in that early stage of feeling those things, say it, speak it, learn about it, and put an action plan together with the people that love you. I am feeling these things. I don't know what to do about them. I need help. Make that support team part of the journey, because you can't support somebody that can't tell you how to support them.
Right.
It's the worst question ever, right? You ask somebody, how can I support you?
Right.
And what do they say?
I don't know.
Well, then
they wouldn't be in the circumstance they were if they knew how someone could support them.
Yes.
Most of the time.
And so then you find yourself trying to throw a stab at the dark.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could do that. You have to vocalize what you're feeling. If you're in a family, your kids deserve that. Your parents deserve that. Your partner deserves that. And they want to help.
Yeah.
And in the case of men's mental health specifically, you know, a lot of business owners, like startup founders, right? There's this entrepreneurial shame that comes along with starting a company. And a lot of mental health struggles are in that space right there. And it's funny because I've attended a few men's groups, if you will. I've been invited to attend a few men's networking groups. And one of the things that is so consistent is I'm struggling. I'm going through some things. My wife's wondering what's going on. And I'm like, your wife already knows what's going on.
Yeah.
She knows. She's just waiting for you
Right.
to vocalize it so that she can actually be a partner and help you in it. So, you know, my biggest encouragement for men, if you feel yourself struggling with some of those things early on, just like you would if you had cancer, you would go and you'd seek out as many treatments as you could, as early as you could, so that you could extend your life. Mental health struggles are the exact same.
Yeah.
There is no stigma. Like, it's the stigma is the inaction around it, right?
Yeah. It's
So,
true.
yeah.
You've been listening to the Honorary Dr. Carrie Hill. It's such great advice. Thank you. Thank you very, very much for sharing. And
thanks, Dave.
there's a perfect blend of both like your personal experience and then just some very sound mental health counsel as well. So I really appreciate you coming, sharing your story and helping people learn from that as well. Go find her. Go find her on social media. Positive, uplifting content to counteract your doom scrolling, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Well, thank you again for coming today.
Thank you.
And thanks everyone for listening. Remember that change starts with you, and together we can increase our mental health momentum.